All right, so I think we could get started. We have 5 members of the board, myself, Mike Ward, Mike Moran, Chris Magliozzi, and Steve Meyer present.
Thanks. I got a call from Dan Pilata from P3, and he is headed back to his computer now and thought he might be 10 or 15 minutes late, but he thought he'd be here. I think Megan is actually here today for P3 as well. But Dan's on the way, I heard.
Okay. Well, we could get started with, I guess first on the list is engineering assessments, just updates on where, the team is on checking in on the old library and the new
Yes.
site.
Yeah, so we've got some slides that we're going to show you. I'm actually, Christine's actually going to go through that. She put the slides together and probably knows the details of it better than I do. But we've had our engineers go out to the site and they've written their reports, and we're going to summarize them for you. We try to line up the slides pretty much in line with your agenda, so we can just kind of walk you through it.
Would it be possible for me? Oh, here we go.
But no big surprises is the summary.
Right. Sorry, it's like asking me for passwords. Can you see my screen?
No.
It's see you.
It's looking for a password?
Yep, that's what.
There we go.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yes.
We can.
Okay, great. So, as Phil said, no big surprises. The structural engineer went out and, did observe some areas, cracking above the stacked area, deterioration at the facade, water, infiltration, but did not see any obvious things that would cause him to say that the structure cannot be renovated and continue to be used. He did, we've been chatting with him as we're starting to look at how we would add or renovate the building. He did express some caveats. One is that, and this is probably something you all are already aware of, that we would want the addition to be structurally separate from the existing building, so that we would not structurally tie into the existing building. There'd be an expansion joint, so that we wouldn't trigger new loading onto the existing building, which would then require structural upgrades. Similarly, we want to avoid adding loads to the existing building as we renovate, so that we don't trigger a need to do any seismic or lateral upgrades. And then also he cautioned that we want to minimize any new openings we're making into existing walls, because by making larger openings or getting rid of walls within the building, we could also thereby trigger a change into how the lateral loads are taken up by the building and trigger a need to upgrade the structural system. So basically, the gist of it is we should use the rooms as they are. We can make small, doorway openings, but not anything more extensive than that. And also be careful that we do not introduce new loads to the existing structure. Mechanical, basically they evaluated the existing system and basically, recommend replacing the system. That's the gist of it. If we would like to look at doing an all electric system, the building will require an electrical upgrade. Reading through the electrical engineer's report, the electrical engineer already is saying if we do anything, we're going to need it to upgrade the existing. It's a 200 amp service, it'll need a larger service. So that's what here, the electrical, their recommendations. They said, the lighting is fairly adequate. But where the switching is very odd in many places. And there isn't a security service. So in summary, the electrical system would want to be upgraded and largely replaced. Plumbing, also very similar. It's all seems to be in good, fine working condition as is right now. But if we are renovating, that also, a lot of the systems are close to end of life, and that we would want to largely replace it. They did mention that the sanitary drainage were visible that seemed to be in good condition, and that could be reused or be maintained and used in the renovation. And then the sprinkler system, there isn't one per code, there should be one. So that would need to be added in a renovation. And I think that brings us to the end of the engineering reports. Phil, do you have anything you would like to add that I missed highlighting?
Sorry, I muted myself. There's some people walking around in here. I don't have anything really to add. We haven't really got into it too deep with civil yet, so there's nothing really to report there. But once we start looking a little bit more closely at the sites, we'll start getting some feedback from them. At this point, we don't have a plan for them to go out and write a report. We're going to use them in their engineering as needed.
Any questions or things you would like us to add some additional information for?
Are you taking questions from the floor or just from?
Sure, you can. Go ahead, Marie.
I just wanted to make sure. It seems that a lot of the issues are like sightline issues wouldn't be improved if there was a renovation, because there still would be walls between everything. And I know we're not addressing that here, but I just kind of want to put that out there. And I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, I guess that's it.
And, as we start laying it out, we can see what can, working with the structural engineer, what can be done. You can remove walls. It's just then you're going to need to do a potentially pretty significant structural upgrade to the building. And so then it becomes, it'll be one of those back and forth, how much does it cost? What do you gain? And things like that. So the most economically conservative way is to try to not touch those things so that we don't trigger that scope of work with the renovation. But understood about the sight lines, and that is something that the library is, grappling with now and would like to resolve in the new building.
Is there an attic in the building?
There is not, or if there is, there's no way to get to it. I mean, there's a space between the curved ceiling in the second floor and the pointed ceiling. We had a bird there caught there once, but there is no access to reach it that we have discovered. I mean, it's a secret door somewhere that nobody can find, but no, not as far as I know.
Is there any insulation anywhere in the building?
I have no idea. I mean, it's solid brick.
Yep.
Concrete. I don't know what it's made out of, but it's pretty solid stuff. I don't know where they would put the insulation. Well, I
Yeah,
tell you what, Mike, there's no insulation in the elevator.
Yeah.
That I know for sure.
Yeah, there's no insulation that we're aware of.
Yeah, so all that would have to be brought up to code then. Correct? For the existing building?
Yeah, we're gonna be doing enough in there that we need to address that.
Yeah.
You know, a couple of years ago, we would have said that changing out your windows and insulating your roof is probably where you're gonna get the most bang for your buck, and that you probably shouldn't try to insulate your old masonry walls, only because it can create dew point problems, and lead to the degradation of your building over the long term. There's no real out in the new code for that we found yet. So it gets tricky. We need to be really careful.
Can I ask Phil, what
Windows could be replaced, right?
The windows could certainly be replaced, yes.
Yeah.
And we'd end up doing your insulation in your attic. Insulating the walls just gets.
Yeah.
Phil, if I can ask, your firm has a lot of experience in additions to libraries. Over the last few years with the new energy code, what has been your experience in meeting the code requirements with an older building?
So we haven't done a renovation under the current code, the current versions of the code that would require insulation of the masonry walls itself. We've done it occasionally. We just need to be really careful about the dew point there. Part of the problem is that you want to make sure that the building can continue to dry to the inside. Old mass masonry buildings just absorb water, and allowing them to dry to the inside as well as the outside is an important part of keeping them all in one place, in one piece. The issue with putting insulation on the inside of a building like this is that you kind of take all that masonry that used to be on the exposed to the warm air on the inside of the building and cold, and you're kind of putting it outside the envelope, the insulation envelope. And it's more susceptible to the freeze-thaw cycles, which is why I mentioned that there's potentials for damage to the building over time.
Are we going to be subject to that code since we haven't adopted it?
There are some things that we may need to do, but we haven't really done a complete code review yet in order to be able to answer that succinctly.
Okay, because Clinton has not adopted the latest stretch code.
Yeah, I recall.
Yeah.
I mean, the code. The code is kind of headed towards net zero energy by 2030, and that's only 5 years away. So it's just the base code. It's getting harder and harder to comply with without doing something. So,
may I ask a question, Chris? Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Go ahead, Gloria.
Okay, to everyone gathered, I am the chair of the Library Trust Board of Trustees. This is because I didn't quite understand when just now saying to keep things without opening up spaces or that sort of stuff. How does the 20%, the current approximately 20% of the building that is not usable but is situated behind the circulation desk, how does that factor in to not opening things up too much because you're
When I said opening, I'm actually meant like door openings or opening up walls, removing walls. Those spaces we'll be looking at some sketches of that later in the show. For the second floor one, we would provide either a lift or a ramp to get you up to that level to provide accessibility. And we would continue to use the existing doorway. And then for the one on the first floor, there is an existing opening behind the desk. Since the desk will probably be relocated, we would be using that opening to get into that space.
That space which currently extends from that first floor up to basically the top of up to the second too. So it's structured on 2 levels.
Right. The stacks, those self-supporting stacks would be removed. And you would just have the first floor would essentially continue into that space.
And that would, with a very high ceiling then.
With a very high ceiling, correct.
We're actually going to touch on that a little further in the slides.
Okay, sorry,
That's okay.
I'll vanish.
Anything else on the engineering assessments? Okay, then we'll move on to the program reconciliation, where we've been doing a lot of work with Marie to reconcile the program from the 2024 program that was submitted with the grant application. So you're just seeing a couple, screenshots of that grant application. It has a I don't know if everyone's had the chance to read through that. It describes what is needed in each space, in this longer verbal text and then also in the summary spreadsheet. And yes.
Excuse me, Christina, maybe I missed it somewhere in my
Mhm.
email. Where is this available? This information? Is this on?
Chris, it's a huge file. You can read it in print if you want to come to the library, but it is available on our website. If you
So it's
go
posted
to-
on your website, Marie?
It is.
The
Yeah.
library website?
Yes. I think it's under construction project, status of project. If you go, there's a menu and it's right there. It's what we submitted a year ago.
Is everyone having a hard time hearing Marie, or is that my speakers?
No, it's probably me. I can speak louder. What I can do is put a link to it in the Zoom. Would that help?
That'd be great. Yes, please.
Thanks, Marie.
And we'll be using this file in this area as a repository for all information here. Will we have a separate website or a separate Dropbox or something for all the information moving forward?
We could set up a website. P3 may be doing that, but that may be for the public. We could certainly set up a file sharing site where we could put copies of all this stuff. And we would typically send copies of the PDF files that we show you to folks after each meeting.
Yeah, but I'm guessing over time there'll be copies of plans and
Yep.
3D imaging, some pretty big files, right? So
So we can set up a file sharing.
that would be appreciated. Thank you.
I'm back.
We're done.
I lost my internet connection.
Might have jinxed you, Chris.
Yeah, I think you did. The TV, everything, the whole house was out, so just reset it. But anyways, hopefully you didn't wait for me.
We went through the engineering assessments, so would you like to circle back to that, Chris?
No, I was there for most of it. I was only
Okay.
like for a minute.
Okay.
And we had just said, Chris, that we're going to put together a file sharing site that we could post the documents in so that folks can find them.
Okay.
And we'll put things there. And then I think that P3 will have, and they'll probably touch on this during the marketing agenda item, but I think they'll have a website set up for things that they're going to share to the public. And they'll go through that with you on a regular basis about what you'd like to share and get that all posted.
Okay.
So we were just starting to chat about the program reconciliation process. And so Marie put into the chat the link to the original 2024 program for the library. And then as part of our process, we take that information and put it into this spreadsheet, which helps us calculate what sizes we think for that, all the things that need to be in the space, what kind of size room we need. And that helps us to see, places where there are things that we should look at more carefully. So this is where we are right now in that process. And we then couple it with doing program diagrams that lay out the spaces. So the spreadsheet gives us a sense of like how big the space probably needs to be. And then we go and do the graphics, because often we can find efficiencies. Sometimes we find that we actually need a little more space. Like if you need a wheelchair turnaround, you know, a small study room actually grows from what it is needed for just to accommodate the furniture. And so then we do these program graphics. And so we've done 3 iterations together with Marie, and that representatives from the MBLC have also been reviewing this. And we will be meeting with library staff this Friday to get their input as well, now that we've kind of gotten things tightened down. So when we first looked at it, due to some things in that original program and different square footage allowances and things like that, we were actually coming up with needing a building of 24,000 square feet. And then working together with Marie and the MBLC, we found places to, in some places we've reduced things, in some places we've found efficiencies. Some of the assumptions now in revisiting them have been changed in terms of growth and things like that. And so we are now landing at a building. This was from last Friday, and where we were at 20,600, and now we're down to 20,515. And that seems probably about where we will land for this exercise. Of course, then once we go to do floor layouts and are, you know, looking at an actual building, things shift again. But this is a way of confirming the program, confirming the needs before we move into that exercise. Would people like more detail on this, or zooming in on something? Oh, here's a little bit of a zoomed in look at, so we're listing all the spaces. You know, this compares what was in the program and what we are now providing.
You can see over there, the difference column shows that some of the spaces were a little low, some were a little high, and we started out at a little over 4,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet, larger than the original kind of expectation, I guess. But we've been able to get that to just over 20,000 square feet at this point, and still get in there what you need and what is going to satisfy the Board of Library Commissioners. And again, if we can find some more efficiencies, we certainly will. It's really going to depend on the types of buildings we're looking at. After talking to the structural engineer, as Christina kind of summarized at the beginning of this, we're going to have to find some spaces that kind of align with the square footages of the existing spaces you have in your building, and we'll have to fit them in there. And so if they're a little big or a little small, that kind of inefficiency is going to creep in on us, and it may have an impact on the overall size of the building. If we find opportunities to increase efficiency, then the number may come down a little bit, depending on how much we can kind of carve out of it. But this gives us a pretty good starting point, so that we can start to look at what might fit on the different sites.
And
What
as
the
I
square
mentioned,
footage of the existing building is?
the existing building is, oh, here, let's just cheat. Jump ahead. So its footprint is 3,700. And then it depends on how much, you know, in terms of programmable square footage, it depends on how we're renovating it.
Mhm.
But we're ending up somewhere between 6,300 and 7,400 of programmable spaces within the building.
And that the big difference there is really whether or not you try to build a second floor in there, right?
Yeah, if you excavate the basement.
Is that additional space? What programmable space? Is that what that is? Or
No,
are you just talking about?
so the programmable the building is a certain size, gross square footage, right? But that
Right,
includes things like the boiler room and, all of those things, the stairs, the thickness of the walls. So what this diagram was looking at was just trying to get a quick snapshot of how much program we would be able to
As
fit into
is,
the
with it,
as
as
is.
is.
Yes,
Gotcha.
this one is as is, except that we're going, we took a little bit square footage away for a ramp in this version to get up to the raised second floor. And this one has a little more work on that end of the building where we're excavating to get the basement level there. But so we're looking at, it's somewhere between 6,300 and 7,400 square feet of programmable space as is in the building. Yeah.
We've got a section slide just help explain what we're talking about here. Great, but we've just jumping ahead to answer your question on the square footage available. I
So
think that probably concludes the programming summary to date. If anybody has any questions about the programming.
I just actually want to, Mike, were you asking about programmable space or the actual square footage of the current building?
Yeah, just the actual square footage.
It's about 11,000 square feet in total. I mean, based on, I don't know, years of looking at stats of my building. But most of that, a lot of that is clearly not usable for library program stuff.
Yep.
Can I ask a question on the two schematics, the two program bubble diagrams we looked at the last slide? I noticed on the first slide, do as little as possible. You took a portion of the children's room to incorporate a ramp into the design.
mm-hmm.
On the one on the right, there's no ramp or anything. Are you proposing to bring that to demolish that cracked slab and bring that put in a new floor at the second floor level?
That's what we were starting to look at. Yeah.
Great.
Making that assumption. And if, this is also, these were early diagrams, there also, we could do something like a lift, which would take less of a footprint away from the children's room and things like that. So this was more just to kind of test the waters of what realm are we living in with reusing this building.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. It's one of those presentations where you kind of wish you could just present everything at once because it all ties together. So I'm sure we'll be going back to the programming part once we start looking at what this means on the sites. So we, looking at the zoning for the two sites, so the Walnut Street site is zoned as business retail, which actually allows for quite a lot of density on the site. We would not build to this density, but per zoning, it does allow for quite a bit of density. And then the Chestnut Street site is in a residential zone now. And so that will, to change to a municipal facility will require a special permit from the Board of Appeals in the process, was our understanding. And we welcome any input from this group who, if there are other things we should be considering as we're looking at the zoning. For the Chestnut Street, another question will be if we need to stick with the dimensional requirements of the residential zoning, or if we would be permitted to use commercial zoning at that site, given the change of use. It seems in starting to do some initial test fits, that we probably can just comply with the residential. So we'll see how that shakes out moving forward. The biggest difference really is the lot coverage that is permitted by
I am going to say, and I should defer to Phil Duffy for this because he's the one who told me this. I believe if it's a municipal building building, it has fewer restrictions, even if it's in residential. Like it's a less onerous process to sort of break the rules. I don't know. I feel like
Well, a special permit is certainly better than a variance for sure.
Yeah, let me look it up real quick. It says it is a special permit from the Board of Appeals.
Right.
So for municipal uses, as to the dimensional requirements, it hasn't come up before. I think what is the maximum coverage in the R1 district? Is it 50%?
25.
25?
Residential is 25, commercial zoning is 50.
Yeah, I think the R1 is actually 80, but the BR is actually 80, I think. But
Yes, the BR is 80, but this,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess I wasn't going quite that far. Yes, the BR is 80.
oh, commercial is 50. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would we up? Well, we'll have to see how this lays out. But just in terms of the building footprint, if we're over, we'll have to make that argument to the zoning board of appeals
Mhm.
and do a
Yeah.
little more work as to whether it's a variance or if there's some other permitting procedure other than a variance to allow for exceed the dimensional limit on a lot of area coverage.
Yes, it actually, in laying it out, it looks like we may be able to just stay with the residential, which would be the easiest, so.
Yeah.
Then there's parking. So we did note that there is in the zoning bylaw that non-residential, non-industrial uses fronting on Church Street between Walnut and School are exempted from the parking requirements. So our understanding is that this site would be exempted from the parking requirements, the existing library site. And then for the Chestnut Street site, looking at the bylaw, there isn't a use that exactly matches the library. The closest one we figured would be the 2B, institutional uses, educational purpose, which calls for 1 space per 3 occupants plus 1 per 2 employees. But that is a question. We did not see, we've reached out to the, who did you reach out to, Phil?
I reached out to Gary Smith and James Salmon. The website listed Gary Smith as the building inspector and zoning enforcement officer. But then when I called, it said that James Salmon, who was listed on the website as an alternative building inspector, was the building inspector. So
Yeah, Jim Salmon retired, but he's the alternate he's no longer the full-time building inspector.
So is that Gary Smith?
So Gary Smith would be the new guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Under site plan review, the planning board has the discretion to waive strict compliance with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. If the applicant can demonstrate that the parking that's proposed is adequate to their purposes.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Because
I was going to say, one of the things that I mentioned in the email that I sent to Mr. Salmon and Smith were that because you didn't have a specific requirement for libraries in your zoning bylaw, and it's not uncommon, we have in some cases suggested that you could defer to the Board of Library Commissioners, which is Code of Massachusetts Regulation 605, which calls for parking specific to libraries, and some communities have decided to go with that because it meets the Board of Library Commissioners requirements and it's specific to libraries. It comes out to 1 space per 400 square feet gross plus accessible parking plus employees parking, and it's basically right sizing parking lots so that you don't end up cave in a bunch of space that you need to pay for and then maintain in perpetuity that may not get used.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so going by what's in the zoning code, we need about 70 parking spaces. And by the MBLC, we need 52, plus whatever we decide for the employee spaces. So when we look at the site on Chestnut Street, this is what we did 2 kind of sketches just to start getting a sense of sizes and what fits and constraints. So this is the most like small footprint we would have for the library, where this is using the gross square footage from the program and just stacking it. So 2 stories, full program, no double height spaces or anything like that. And so it leads to a fairly compact building. We're only covering just over 17% of the site. And then this is 52 parking spaces. And, of course, you'll see a more efficient parking layout in the other one. We kind of wanted to present 2 graphics, one where there's a lot of green space around the parking spaces, one where the parking is more compact. But it gives you a sense of how much space there is on the site. And then this gray tone is the 50% coverage that would be per commercial zoning, just to have a sense of what that would mean.
So is the coverage, does the coverage include parking?
No.
No,
Not even in
it's
the
buildings.
It's just structure.
Yeah, including roof overhangs, but
Okay.
it's not about paved surfaces.
If you get the special permit, you don't need a variance.
So in terms of parking, is the MBLC going to approve something that doesn't have 52 spaces?
The
I mean,
MBLC,
that,
I can answer that. The MBLC will essentially defer to, if you've got a local zoning bylaw that is specific to libraries, or that your zoning enforcement officer and planning board would like to assign to the building, they're fine with that. If your zoning bylaw only required 10 parking spaces, the MBLC would be okay with that. They would recommend that you use, or at least consider, the number of parking spaces that they require as a minimum, which is that 1 per 400 square feet gross plus employees and accessible parking. But
I don't know that they'd be happy.
they wouldn't necessarily be happy. But occasionally, like your existing site would have none, and they wouldn't be happy about it, but they would defer. If it got approved locally, they would defer to local approval.
okay, thank you.
It's not uncommon to have a nice old library sit on a site somewhere in town and not have enough room for parking. So this wouldn't be the first time that the MBLC has dealt with it. We just opened a new addition renovation of our library in Melrose, and before the addition renovation, we had 20 parking spaces, and now that it's done, we have 20 parking spaces. And neither one of them met the zoning bylaw, but they got away with it because it got approved.
And then for comparison, so this is, more efficient parking layout, showing 52 spaces. And this would be still a 2-story library, but kind of doing more, 2/3, 1/3 for upstairs, which often works out well given programmatic requirements of there's so many things that want to be on the first floor. And also allows for, thinking about how this will get masked, allowing for double height spaces, things like that, not having so compact a building. So we were kind of looking at how large a building could go on the site while still accommodating sufficient parking. So that's what, so it's kind of looking at, neither of these is obviously the final solution. It's kind of trying to bookend some of the things that we need to consider as we look at the site. As you can see, if we are going to try to get 70 or so spaces in here, it's going to be a lot of parking. The building cannot really get much smaller than this, and so we would be squeezing in quite a bit of parking to meet that 70 per, using that one, the educational interpretation for the site.
Would it be easier to come in off of Church Street rather than Chestnut?
No,
It-
the lot
It's not at
doesn't,
the corner.
It's not at the corner, and there's houses in the way. I mean, I don't think there's an opening to get from
Yeah,
Church
we don't
Street.
have any access.
There's no access from Church
No.
Street?
No.
That's all AT&T or whatever.
It's Verizon, and then the
Yeah.
next house up, Sergeant's.
It's Verizon vacant lot, then homes.
Yeah.
But Mike, I thought that was a good idea too.
Yeah.
Well, there are going to be some topography issues with this lot and retaining walls, and it's
Yeah.
going to be, for sure.
It's tough to get onto that street too.
All right.
Yep, and to that point about the residential zoning, so this lot coverage is 22.7, so we're still under. So it seems like we will be able to do that, keep an eye on that, avoid the variance.
Good.
So then switching over to the other site, we already kind of took a quick look at this about, how to reuse the existing building, the programmable square footage that's available. And then this is that section that Phil was talking about earlier. So, the more simple one is to somehow provide access to this raised floor, leave it at its current elevation, remove the stacks, and then we'd have to put in a new first floor. But we wouldn't do anything to try to regain that space in the basement here. It'd be a crawl space. Another option is to remove the stacks, excavate here to gain this square footage for the building. Because we're lowering this floor, we also have to lower the soil on the outside of the building so that we're not increasing the lateral pressure, because we're essentially having more soil bear onto the foundation wall otherwise. Put in a first floor and put in a second floor, which it looks like we're going to have a head height with the window issue. So that will, we just started looking into what that might mean. So, one of the things that we're now looking at is, like Phil was talking about, what program would go where, given that we have to preserve kind of the room-like nature of the building. And, given all of this work, does it make sense for really gaining this amount of square footage in a basement with a low ceiling? And, so we're starting to weigh those options as we look at how to, try to get as much programmable square footage in the building, but in an efficient and, economically logical way.
So it seems like expensive, but not very nice space. And so the
Right.
question is whether or not it's really worth it.
yeah, and there's also 120 years of heating oil in the slab, and perhaps under the slab. It might be a thing to deal with as well. So.
So
For what it's
looking,
worth-
oh, go ahead.
So you were mentioning moving that slab and the window openings on the north side of the building. Those window openings they're just slot windows. They're, I think the rough opening is probably 2 feet wide. You know,
Yeah, just a little more. Yeah. I think there were
So, but,
two.
you know,
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely solvable. It's just
Yeah.
like it was just, we're like, oh, another thing to add to that list of, complications of it. So looking at the site diagram, we took what we thought could fit into this building in terms of program, and then did an addition for the remaining parts of the program. So this is basically, kind of this size building is then a 3-story addition at the rear of the site. We would do, somehow we need to bring an accessible entry into it. So, making some type of plaza here on Church Street and allowing that to become the main entrance. But given the size of the addition, it will be very hard to have really any parking on the site. I mean, the only way you could still accommodate parking is if you move this addition really up to the street to get a few places in the back here.
I also have to, be a little bit cognizant of the staff. We have just enough staff to cover the current building. And if we're doubling the size of this building for another 3-story addition, there's I don't know how we could actually have any sight lines on anybody because there's just not quite enough eyes. Sorry, just throwing that up.
You'll probably have 150 cameras.
Yeah, I don't want to spend my day looking at cameras.
Well, it is a good point, Marie, of that, the new building can be designed so that the sight lines are more improved, and so it wouldn't have the same impact on staffing as this would. And then we looked at, another option of making the basement level larger than the other one, with an idea that it could be a terrace. You come out from the first floor of the addition and onto this terrace, and that could be the main entry into the addition, allowing this footprint to get somewhat smaller and reduce the mass that's next to the existing library. So those are kind of the, it's something we're now starting to put together massing models to explore how this actually sits on the site. We're also very well aware that the Historical Society building is quite close to the lot line there. And so it's not just thinking about how the addition relates to the mass of the existing library, but also how it, interacts with its neighbor on the other side of the lot line. So questions, comments? These were kind of to just help us all start understanding the size of what we're putting onto both of the sites. What are the constraints? Parking is obviously a constraint on this site.
Also on this side that I think is also, I mean, Mike mentioned or Chris mentioned the terrain on Chestnut Street, but this is quite a bit of terrain change as well. Like going down to Church Street. I mean, the library's built up. It's almost like they built this little mound just for the library. And then you have all this, everything kind of slopes down pretty steeply towards Church Street. So there's another issue. Well, so are you digging down to the point where okay.
Yeah, so basically, we have to look at the floor to floor heights in the addition, but basically we're digging down to the Church Street level, and that's your basement level, approximately. The existing basement, this floor to ceiling is quite low, and we wouldn't want to repeat that. So that's on our list of things to figure out how which floor would have to be somewhat off shifted in order to get a better ground story in the addition. And
What is a typical, I'm sorry, what's a typical height? Because I never felt that our lower level ceiling was particularly low. Are you saying the lower level ceiling is low?
It's the complication is in building a new building, Marie, because we won't be building it the same way your existing building is. We'll have a
Yes,
steel
nobody.
frame and a concrete slab probably, and then we'll
Gotcha.
need to run duct work and piping and everything around it.
I see it.
Mhm.
That assembly
ceiling
above your
as well.
head between the ceiling and the floor above is just chunkier in a new building than the old building didn't have a lot of the stuff that we're going to try to squeeze into that space.
Okay, thank
All right. What's next?
We may have covered most of our
Yep.
agenda items. I think you may be looking at the last slide that we had in our show for tonight.
Does everybody understands, everybody understood the 30% grossing factor and how we got to the 20,000?
Yeah.
Okay. I figured you did, having just gone through it with your school.
Yeah, 30% is a pretty good multiplier to use when you're not quite sure if you're going to be doing 1-story or 2-story. The more stories you add, the more you need your exit stairs and elevators start to eat up a large chunk of your square footage, your footprint. And so if we can, we can make a 1-story building much more efficient. If you had 3 or 4 acres sitting somewhere in the center of town, it'd probably be great.
Could you get a 1-story building on the Chestnut Street site?
Not
with parking.
Okay.
Yeah, so, whoops.
It'd fit on common.
How big an impact is parking currently?
Are you asking the library?
Yeah, I guess so, because you see where your guests come in and your patrons.
There's probably as many people walk as drive a car. But they park on the street. I mean, there are people who say when we did our patron feedback before we submitted the application, half the people said more parking, and the other half said parking wasn't an issue at all. It all depends on how you want to walk and how many kids you have.
Yeah,
I park on the street. I don't have any problem finding parking.
just,
but that's me.
Going from 0 to 52, it seems
Right,
like-
going from 0 to 52, they probably will be empty. Some of them will be empty for a while, and they'll get used when we're closed. It would basically just be another. I kind of feel like it would be another municipal lot that people would be using. I don't know in terms of customer patrons. That's a good question. Because we don't have that many, it's hard for me to say. I do know that for some people it's an issue, for some people it's not an issue.
So, I guess the folks here who are very experienced in library renovations, how does parking help the draw? I mean, see, in other words, how big a deal is to get increased community engagement in the library is having parking on site like this?
I think the biggest issue you're going to have is when you have programs, which you don't really have the space for in the building now. And so when you have programs, we typically, just kind of step back for a second, in general terms, we would typically see that your circulation numbers and your visiting numbers are gonna spike when you open your new building to between double and triple what you have right now. And then we'll probably kind of settle down to double what you have in terms of visits. So, got a little dog here.
Yeah.
And but the biggest impact you're going to have in terms of parking is probably going to be based on the programs you have, children's programs and adult programs in your meeting spaces and in your story and program rooms. Those become a huge draw, and that's really when you're going to be parking. I don't know that you'll really get to 70 the way that or 100, or depending on how you look at the zoning bylaw. I don't think your building will ever need that many. I think that the Board of Library Commissioners numbers of about 1 per 400, as we mentioned before, is going to be pretty close to covering what you're going to need.
Yeah. Relative to parking, how much we need parking in a new facility? Well, it's a particular cohort. We have the experience of the Council on Aging building, which we opened about 10 years ago, which went from no parking to I think they have 40 spaces, 34, 40 spaces. I can't remember the number exactly, but it'd be interesting to have a conversation with one of the former directors of the senior center to understand how important the parking was for their new patrons when they opened up. I mean, like both of these library locations are in very heavily populated neighborhoods. As Marie says, a lot of people will walk. They'll walk to Walnut Street and they will walk to Chestnut Street. But to be interesting we have a local case study to maybe consider to understand how much parking will be needed, how much we can forecast anyway.
I think the town could use all the parking it can get, Phil.
Yeah. I mean, 52
Always a shortage of
spaces.
parking spaces.
Well, that was what I said. I'm like, it would kind of be another municipal lot.
Right.
Yeah, you got that car show the other day was people have
Yeah.
a difficult time finding parking. Old Home Day, the Tuesday night concerts. There's a lot of times when people would park there. Town meetings and
Well, but they don't park at the senior center now. So the senior center restricts the parking.
Yeah, they restrict the parking, right? Yeah. But if you didn't restrict it, I park in this lot all the time now. But a lot of people don't because they don't really know it's parking. You can, that it's municipal lot or whatever, but.
Yeah, okay. I was just curious because talking about how much space you need for the things that are like stairs and an elevator, and that's why I was asking if you could also, because I know the sightline issue. I was just wondering how much parking would we lose? Which would still be an increase of what we have now.
Yeah.
Right.
If we could pull it off, if we could do a 1-story building and get all your parking on the site, that would definitely be one of the things that we'd be looking at.
Okay.
But Phil, can you look at it without getting the full 1 per 400?
Basically, do a 1-story building and see how much parking we can
building and
get.
see how much parking we can get, and maybe that additional parking might be enough. There is a lot of on-street parking in this area. I can honestly say, in all the times I've been there, I've never had a problem getting a space.
We can certainly look at that. That way, if the question ever comes up, we'll be able to answer it, which I think makes sense.
Because it would be a lot cheaper to build a 1-story building, and you wouldn't have the annual cost for the elevator.
Yeah, just in kind of general terms for folks. I think part of the reason that Dan is asking is that in a 2-story building, 2 exit stairs are required by code, and so you have a footprint on 2 floors for 2 stairs, plus an elevator and an elevator machine room. In round numbers, is about 1,000 square feet. And if you don't need to build that 1,000 square feet, that comes right off the top of your 30% multiplier. We don't need it, and it's expensive space to build and maintain. So, we can take a look at it and see what it would mean to the overall parking.
I mean, maybe the parking goes in front, and so it can be used by the public, and the building goes towards the back.
And in some cases where we've worked on downtown public libraries, we've talked to the local churches. Lots of times libraries are closed on Sundays, or have more limited hours on Sundays, and that's when the church really needs their lot, and lots of other times they don't really use it. So we've done some cross parking arrangements with local churches and things like that in the past as well.
The churches don't have any parking either.
No, they don't.
It goes that idea.
Could I make a suggestion or a question about this diagram here with so many parking spaces? If we do have a building like 2-story where there's a footprint for a lot of parking spaces, and we don't really need all of those parking spaces, could there be a carve out for a little playground area? I don't think there is a playground in the center. I mean, obviously it wouldn't be a big deal thing, but a swing set, a funky slide or something that people could use, since we don't need so much space for parking. Just a suggestion idea.
We're actually showing a spot, and maybe you could kind of show it on the plan there at the kind of rear of the building. It's about 40 feet top to bottom and maybe 50 or 60 feet long. That kind of a green space at the rear end of the building, close to the handicap spaces. That's a pretty good size area for something like a story garden or a place you could do a little play structure or something like that. We try to kind of keep that in mind, to have some kind of outdoor space. And I think it would be great if we could take advantage of that and it didn't all get eaten up by parking. I would agree that it's nice to do that and not have it on the front lawn if you could avoid it. But we're so preliminary that we haven't really gone to look too hard at stuff like that yet. But I can tell you one of the other things that we thought about was on this plan, if you're looking at the entrance from the rear where the handicap parking spaces are shown, you could actually do a canopy that kind of sticks out over those handicap parking spaces, or maybe just out over the plaza, and that could become a balcony on the upper floor where you could go outside.
Yes. I mean, if we have to do 2 floors, yes.
We like that idea.
I like
Take advantage of the outdoor space and still have security for the materials. It's having outdoor spaces that you can use has become more and more popular since COVID has come along, and they're looked kindly upon by the Board of Library Commissioners as well.
And the terrace block that you had shown in one of your schemes on Walnut Street would be basically doing the same thing where you reorganize the, yeah.
Yes,
So
very
it would
thing.
come
That
out.
would be basically a roof deck rather than a canopy deck, but yeah, very similar thing. Yes.
That'll be a nice view.
Yeah, I think it'd be a popular space to be.
Okay. Anything else? I can stop screen sharing.
So I guess we really got a lot to think about, but you guys are gonna, between now and our next meeting, come up with some preliminary cost estimates, I'm assuming, or?
We're gonna push a little further on the design options between the two, so that we have a little bit more meat on the bone that we could kind of do. It's gonna be hard for us to do a cost estimate of each of these things, but we could kind of do an order of magnitude.
Yeah.
Maybe tell you what's maybe more important is what the differences are between the costs of one idea versus the other.
We also need to understand how the libraries work.
It needs to function as a library.
At least as important as the cost.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we may find that this costs this much more than that, but this doesn't work great as a library for these 5 reasons, and we'll try to bring that to you next time.
Yeah, for sure. So how much time do you need between now and our next meeting? I mean,
What we
as a
talking
board,
about doing like a month or so, Dan? Was that what we talked about? And then maybe meeting with Marie a little bit more often?
Yeah. I don't think we need the building committee for a month. We could fully develop. I think we could fully develop the options we talked about today. And then get some direction. you guys can give us direction, because I would think by the end of August, we're gonna have to start focusing in on one of them. And I think, you know, I know Megan's on here. We wanted to talk about marketing. And I know at some point we wanted to meet with the selectmen and kind of get some direction from the selectmen at some point too. So I mean, I think a month is fine. It's definitely gonna ramp up when we get to September.
Okay. All right, so you want to get into marketing, and then we'll set the date. We can either do the 20th or the 27th, I guess, of August.
I won't be around on the 27th, so the 20th works better.
Well, or do we want to stick with Tuesdays? We usually do Tuesdays. I don't know why we did Wednesday this week, but we usually do Tuesdays. So the 19th or the
I was away yesterday. I might have messed that up for you. Sorry.
19th works for me.
All right, let's plan on the 19th, 6:30.
Bill, you'll be driving the boat that day? 'Cause
Yeah,
I,
Christina's
I
gonna
won't
be
be
okay.
here.
Yeah, I can take care of it. You bet.
Okay.
You want us to dive into a little bit of marketing, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, indeed.
You're up, Megan.
Good evening, everyone. I did not make a slideshow because I did not know I was coming. However, I did want to go through. I have been working a lot with Marie and Gloria on the marketing plan and outreach coverage for this project. Our main objectives are to educate the public about the need for a library project and explore the things that have been done, what the MBLC is, what the MBLC grant is, etc. With our messaging about the state of the facility, the size, in attracting community input, and again, expressing what the MBLC is. We have broken our timeline out by months, well, kind of like sections. So June and July, we've been working on an informational flyer, a trifold brochure. Well, I guess the informational flyer is actually a postcard that Maria has been giving out at everywhere.
Yeah, the concerts, we give out the concerts too.
Yeah, the concerts, I believe they're available at the library. We have the trifolds. Do we have the trifolds got printed and delivered, correct? I think they did.
Yes, they did. The
Okay.
big ones. Those also
Okay.
go out at the concerts.
I am building a project website that is independent from the library's website. I'm hoping to publish it on Friday. That depends on traffic tomorrow. If I'll have time tomorrow to continue working on it, it might be Monday. However, there is a QR code that we have been putting on our flyers and trifolds. And anything that I have been producing, it is a dynamic QR code. So right now it points to the informational webpage on the library's website, but soon it'll point to this new website, and that's where I will update as we continue through this process, what is achieved, what has been decided. A newsletter, an electronic newsletter will go out next week that introduces the project team. Phil, P3, and then there will be a second newsletter that will go out shortly after that explains a lot of what's in the trifold and the informational flyer. We're trying to make sure that we can hit people at any position that they may be in with the same information, what the MBLC is, what the MBLC grant program is, what has already been accomplished, what are our goals, who the project team is, when you can be there, or like public meetings. August and September, as the design and public engagement continues, we will continue newsletters. And sorry to go back because I have to update this. We also made a 2 by 3 foot sign with pictures from both Marie Gloria and the team at Johnson Roberts about the deficiency of the library. And they're being printed. They're 2 foot by 3 foot. They will be available to be put on easels or pinned or hung up in any public building that it's approved. I believe Marie's planning to bring it on the book bike as well. We are printing a few waterproof ones so that they can go for placement in the yard outside or the grassy area outside the library. And I'm talking to the printer about magnets that can be very like for cars that are like, have you heard about the library project, with that same QR code to point them to more information. Our current goal is catching like everybody in the town up on what has happened, because doing the whole MBLC grant is very library intensive. But then once you get it, the entire town comes on board and we get to catch everybody up on what we're doing. So that was to Dan's point about meeting with the select board. We are pushing Old Home Day as the real outreach start, like in-person outreach start. We have scheduled tentatively, I'm not sure if they're actually, Marie can correct me, but for September 11th, September 13th, and September 16th at various
So
times throughout the
change it
day.
to the 4th. So change it to the 4th. They're Taurus.
All of them,
4th, 11th, and 13th.
4th, 11th, and 13th. Okay. Well,
But I can do more.
we want people to be able to go into the library because, sometimes you hear about a project, but you don't necessarily know why they need it. And then you go inside and you're like, oh, I get it now. And then they can ask questions. They can become more familiar with the building itself. We're planning to have an open forum after we have done these talk and tours, an open forum that will include OPM and designer on September 13th, hopefully.
30th?
Yep,
The
it says
13th is
30th.
Saturday.
It says 30th. I am looking. It says 30th. I said 13th. I am looking at 30th.
Hey, I just
And-
not to interrupt, but I will have we'll have our open houses for every one of our schools that like I think that's like the last week of August and then the first 2 weeks of September. So if you have cards with like QR codes and you're trying to get people invited and get the word out,
Yes.
Great idea.
the end of September,
Oh, thank you, Steve.
we can pass those out. Have them available at all our open houses. Yeah.
All right, let me add that to this list. School open houses.
You know what else,
As
Megan? I want to make sure that all the presentations we do to the building committee are also easily obtainable. So people know that it's an open and transparent process and that this isn't just, all of a sudden they're going to see
So,
something coming at them. I want them to know that, the building
Well,
committee, this, and this.
It's
so
that
I
the goal
know
for
that this,
that is to be on the website as well.
right, and I know that this recording will be on the town's YouTube, and I'll make links to it. I'm sure Megan will make links to it. They'll be as much as we can make it available.
Okay.
Yes. And then in mid-September, hopefully I can start working with Phil and Dan and Marie on a presentation to update people at the town meeting, the special town meeting this fall, to be like, this is where we're at with the process. This is what's going on. This is what you can expect. And then we will continue this outreach through the winter.
So my big question is, I know Phil was saying by next month, it sounds like the permanent building committee will have to decide between new or renovate. So in between now, I mean, am I misinterpreting what you said? So are we, all right, so I'm gonna stop there. Are you asking, is the PBC going to have to determine by the next meeting whether it's new or renovated?
I don't know that they need to decide, but I think they're going to have the information to be able to start digesting it. Would you agree?
Okay, so I want to know about getting, resident feedback, and I want to know, when we schedule that, what kind of forms we have for that. That's all.
May I ask about this follow on to the 30th date of the public forum that would be in the town hall? Is it possible for people to check their calendars and commit to that date now? Because Megan will be helping us promote that particular public forum and circulating that information in ideally September, i.e. during Old Home Day. Is that possible to nail that 30th public forum tonight, and also then to be able to book the space in the town hall ASAP?
I don't know that you're gonna be able to nail it down until the selectmen agreed to the date. Maybe Michael Ward can answer that question.
Okay,
Michael's not on anymore.
What's going? All right.
He has a selectmen's meeting tonight, so
okay.
That's right. I forgot. He had select meeting at 7.
yeah.
All right. I mean, I'll certainly reach out to Michael in the morning to see if we can't nail that down. Phil, would it be possible to make the decision if we give all the information to the committee mid-August, and then we actually have the public forum in September? Can the decision be made in October, or is that too late?
Oh, October does seem like it's getting kind of late. What if we,
We do need public input on new versus nation.
agreed, but if we meet with the PBC and go through the options next time and then have our public meetings and then come back with the next iteration, public feedback, and provide all that information to the PBC, they could probably make a decision at their next meeting, and that would be in September, and I think we'd be okay with that.
That sounded like a plan. We'll try to do some sort of outreach in August where the public can come and see their opinion.
Sounds good. We'll readjust our plan.
Yep. And those 3 tours, I mean, I know Dan said you're going to be there for at least 2 of them. Phil or Christina might be there for the first one. I don't know. I mean, that could also be, here's a tour, here's a Q&A, but can we work in feedback, or does that have to be separate? This is really not PBC questions. I'm sorry. Just things to consider.
Well, it's marketing, and I think that anytime we meet with the public, we should be taking the questions and the comments.
Yeah, I certainly will.
We will gauge the public's interest, and we will gauge the public's sentiment as to whether they're willing to bite the bullet and go no, or whether to do what they can to save Bigelow and add to Bigelow.
I'm going to come to Old Home Days as you requested, Marie, and I know that
Thank you.
every opportunity that I have to chat with somebody, I'm going to be soliciting feedback on kind of what we're doing, what they want, and that will all kind of go into the mix.
But also, to circle back to what Phil Duffy said earlier, we got to make sure the programming is going to work. We
right.
Just because someone, the public wants one or the other, if it doesn't work, we're kind of spinning our wheels. So we need to make sure it's going to work.
Well, I'm expecting that in the next meeting that Phil's going to have all the spaces laid out within those real rough blocks we saw today, with the colorful squares that he showed you in programming, so that we can see whether, if the adjacencies work and children's flows into young adult and all that kind of stuff, that we know needs to occur. So I certainly, if we're not ready to make a decision, we don't make a decision. The program has to work. MBLC won't approve it. So the programming is going to work by the time we're done.
All right.
I think that's all we got for tonight.
Perfect. All right. So we'll see you in a month.
Sorry, my dog is barking and I forgot I was not muted.
Do we want to be? Yeah, that's my fault. Do you want to be? Do you want to be in person, Mr. Chairman, next time?
If you guys think it'd be better to be in person, then I don't mind being doing it in person.
I feel terrible that I was late because I got stuck in traffic. I was actually in Clinton, so I thought I could make it in time. I like in person.
All right. We can
Yeah.
do it at the
I think
library.
it'd be important to touch and feel what
Okay.
was doing.
Well, do we have a date? What's our next meeting? Did you say it was August
20,
19th?
19th.
19, thank you.
19th.
All right, great. So I have to put that on the calendar in the
Awesome.
library.
All right. We'll do it in person at 6:30 at the library.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Alrighty.
All right. Thanks.